Social media buzzing with images of snowfall in El Paso, Texas. Don't often see that in March, but we've definitely got that this morning. The radar this afternoon around Dallas, East Texas, doesn't really show a whole lot of precipitation, but some bands are moving eastward, and you can see how the textures change as we get into more of the precip being seeded by dendritic ice crystals. And there's a better look at that stuff up there in Oklahoma. Let's check out that surface map. Another outbreak of polar air. This is consistent with that pattern of a trough out in the eastern U.S. and a ridge out west. The El Paso area located right here, getting a plentiful supply of that cold air advection moving across the continental divide into the interior regions south of the Rockies, and you can see another wave on that frontal system in Mexico. The main wedge of warm air that's extending up into Alabama, Mississippi. We've got 70 over 59, 72 over 58 in that air mass. And as you go further south, it gets much richer, and that's helping to support this MCS moving through northern Florida. Out ahead of it, some very warm temperatures. I saw almost 90 degrees around Winter Haven, Florida. Meanwhile, up to the north, more snow in the Great Lakes area and a blast of cold air coming through Minnesota, dropping the temperature down to 11 at Minneapolis and 8 at Bismarck. Some moderation in the patterns out west. Actually seeing 50s up there around Pendleton, so we've definitely warmed up this air mass. A little bit of residual cold air in the Great Basin itself. And let's head out to the Pacific. Moving northward, even Alaska getting some fresh cold air, temperatures dropping well below zero in the northern half of the state. However, the Gulf of Alaska has quieted down. The main storm track out there around the northwestern U.S., that's going to be an atmospheric river heading into British Columbia, and we'll take a look at the IVT values and see if we need to worry about that. And there it is, the atmospheric river lining up quite well with that surface map. And if we roll that forward, you can see shot number 2 also approaching the Pacific Northwest, and that's going to be making inroads around the 14th. So we're talking about Monday going into Tuesday, and there should be rain all the way down into the San Francisco area and Sacramento. Also, the Sierra Nevadas probably getting some of that. And here comes shot number 3 later in the week. That's going to be about Thursday or so, and that heads right into Oregon and Northern California and another system at the very end. So it looks like a few shots for precipitation north of the Bay Area, up to Seattle and Portland. And then checking out Canada, we've still got plenty of Arctic air. Let's bring that east. Minus 20s up there at, I guess that's near Rhea Point. Minus 18 along the dew line. And those sub-zero conditions extend all the way down into Manitoba and Saskatchewan. Then heading out into the Atlantic, we're seeing the Labrador Sea emptying out of cold air, heading out into the Atlantic, and then bringing it down the East Coast. Looks quiet in the Maritimes, and we get back into that wintry weather in the Great Lakes. By the way, if you've heard any weird background noise, we've had some torrential rain coming down here. We are getting it in some areas of Texas and also Florida. They've got this MCS rolling through parts of the northern state. That looks like a vague outflowish segment in that part of Florida. But overall, this is a fairly benign band of rain and thunderstorms. Let's check out the tops on that real quick. Looks like mostly below 30,000. And then further west out into the Gulf, the Mobile, Alabama radar picking up some higher tops, some thunderstorms and showers out there as well. Before we go any further, let's touch base on the upper level dynamics. This is the Q vectors up around 500 millibars, and that's showing a significant area of lift in the Interstate 35 corridor between Topeka and San Antonio. So no wonder we're getting some heavy rain in parts of Texas. And back behind it, there's a subsident area working into West Texas. This forms a couplet that's a quasi-geostrophic disturbance that's embedded in this larger scale flow. You can see a major ridge right there, the major trough axis about like that, and another ridge right there. And then at the even larger scales, this whole area is long wave ridging. And then we have long wave troughing right around here. And there's another set of couplets taking aim on British Columbia, Victoria, Vancouver, and Seattle. Let's run that forward. Everything is moving along very nicely. This shortwave axis makes it to the Atlanta area by tomorrow morning. And this one, negative tilt trough, approaching the northwest coast, and that'll be coming onshore during the afternoon. So it looks like a rainy Saturday and Sunday coming up. And here's a good segue for that. This is the water vapor imagery. A lot of downward motion right in that area there and lift out ahead of it. So what are we looking at? Yeah, sometimes it helps to peel away those state outlines and just look at the pure structure of the atmosphere. And that's that downward motion moving rapidly into southern New Mexico, Amarillo, and then we've got the upward ascent region further out to the east. And at this hour, the traffic cams are looking pretty good. Yep, that sunshine has really broken out. That subsidence working into West Texas very rapidly and putting an end to that snow that we saw earlier today. And touching base on Ukraine, the country located right here, and Kiev, I think that's it right there, 28 degrees. And what we see is that things are still unsettled in the Black Sea region. Still getting cyclogenesis from Turkey and the southern Black Sea area. That's producing these regions of moist advection coming in from the southeast and spreading over Ukraine, keeping the clouds kind of locked in, lots of layers of stratocumulus and altocumulus, and even a few snow bands, mostly in the southern half of the country. You can still see the data outages where there's military operations going on, Donbass back towards Crimea. Same thing up north. But it looks like in the central regions, there's actually quite a bit of synoptic data. Now, there is a push of cold air coming in from Russia. You can see the temperatures are about 10 to 15 degrees lower than what we saw earlier in the week. And even some mid-teens, that's pretty frigid. And I think we're looking at maybe one more shot of cold air, very similar, sometime next week, and then things should gradually start warming up into the 30s and 40s. And, of course, that means mud. And there's a good article on that on Wikipedia. Rasputitsa, you're looking at a very solid layer of clay just beneath the topsoil, which keeps a lot of the moisture locked in. And I really don't think we're going to see this Rasputitsa for maybe about the next 10 days. But as we get into that 10 to 14 day point around the 25th through the 30th, I think we're really going to see things get treacherous. And that could factor into the military operations going on there as we go into April. And then just elsewhere around Europe, it does look like a significant warm-up, starting to see 50s out here in France, a lot of rain. And even up in the British Isles, it's almost entirely liquid precip. And even Norway coming up near 50. So we are changing seasons. April is close at hand. Temperature records today. Looks like Key West is going to be it, and that's not even breaking any records. Nevertheless, a very warm day in Florida. Yeah, we've hit 90 degrees at Sebring. And going further north, eventually we do intersect the outflow boundary from that convection up near Gainesville. Rapidly drops off into the 60s and rain just about everywhere you look. And for tomorrow, another hot day in Florida, 88, breaking the record at Miami. We're going to be seeing 89 at Fort Lauderdale. Meanwhile, to the west, cold conditions, especially out on the Edwards Plateau, 15 degrees at Midland, tying the record for the date. And as that cold air blasts southeast, we are going to set a lot of records Sunday morning, teens and 20s. Looking at around 20 degrees for Atlanta, 20 around the Washington, D.C. area, and just below freezing at New Orleans. And even Florida reporting some, or will be reporting some 20s and 30s. And for next week, not seeing any records, so we'll just skip all that. We are looking at a nor'easter developing. That's coming together along this wave in the southern U.S., and that deformation zone snow will expand as the wave develops. And going into tomorrow, it is pretty fast moving, but it will lay down a snow track from Tennessee, northern Alabama, into West Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. There it goes past New York City about 9 in the morning and on up into Maine, pretty much almost out of Maine by evening. Very, very fast moving, but there will be some snow showers in its wake. For winter weather, the Weather Prediction Center at INSEP is the place to go. I don't see any point trying to argue with their numbers here. There's the 4-inch amounts, pretty much all of the green and red expected to exceed that through a wide area. Not too many 8-inch amounts because of the very fast progression. Maybe some 8-inch amounts in upstate New York and Vermont. And the probability of over a foot of snow, not that likely, but maybe some issues up in New Brunswick. There will be some freezing rain on the southern periphery. Montgomery, Lynchburg, Washington, D.C., New York City, and Boston. But for damaging amounts over a 1/4 inch, not really seeing anything. So a winter storm warning all the way up the Appalachians, and freeze warnings down in southern Mississippi and Alabama. And there's a summary of the amounts of snow from the Weather Service at Albany. Just a few spots of 8 to 12 inches in the higher elevations. And one of the heaviest hit cities probably going to be Syracuse there with 8 to 12 inches. And now that we're getting into severe weather season, we do need to check the convective outlooks. Enhanced risk for northern Florida. Tomorrow, things shift further to the east, mostly affecting the Carolinas coast. No problems for Sunday. The outlook for Monday, indicating a chance of storms in northeast Texas, shifting out to Florida, and then after that, we're not really sure what's going on. I think a good chart to look at would be the dew point. And as many of you may know, I do prefer looking at the 925 millibar dew point. That gets me a little bit up off the surface and gives me some indication of the depth of the moist layer. So starting out, let me go back to 12Z. All right, there's our moisture supply in the western Gulf, feeding most of the Gulf Coast region. Cold air rapidly sweeps that moisture out to sea. The return flow sets up over Texas for Sunday into Monday, and that will be a scarce moisture supply barely getting 40s and 50s up into Texas. But by Monday afternoon, there may be enough of it to support a few thunderstorms from Dallas eastward. Let's take a look at the soundings. Looks like the lapse rates could be a little bit better. The moisture tapers with height. We tend to see that scenario early on in a return moisture phase. But it looks like the low-level jet is set up. It is a little bit southwesterly, but that gives us enough shear for the possibility of some rotating storms. So the moisture and instability, that will probably be working against us to a certain extent. Cold air, once again, kicking everything out into the Gulf. That'll keep things shut down through most of the week. But by Thursday and Friday, a rapid return. Moisture surging up for Thursday evening around Fort Worth and Lawton, Oklahoma City. And then for Friday, once we get the heating going on, looks like maybe Alabama, Mississippi under the gun. And that's probably going to be it for severe weather prospects. Maybe a little something there in the Carolinas for Saturday next week. And then for the following week, yeah, there's more moisture coming up. So things are going to get interesting. And a great chart to look at if you want to just kind of cheat and see the big picture. Go to the supercell composite. That'll give you a rough idea where the areas of interest will be. So for Monday, get up to peak heating. That's going to be it right there. You can see a vague gray fuzzy area that's suggestive of marginal severe weather potential. Yeah, it looks like that whole corridor, Waco to Sulphur Springs, moving eastward overnight. And then for Tuesday, yeah, some potential there east of Jackson. There's peak heating on Wednesday. Just not seeing very high values at all. But the next moisture surge, that probably is going to be a little bit more unstable. Thursday, Friday, the 18th, and there's the 19th. So we will keep watching it, and if there's anything interesting, we will certainly cover it. That's all for this Friday edition. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again Monday for the supporters and Wednesday for everybody else. Take care. Bye-bye.